Let's expand. 24 to 25 million of registered Gen Z did not vote for the 2024 presidential election. Fumbled liberty? Yes, they did. Fumbled constitutional order? Yes, they did. Because contrary to all the other presidential elections, the consequence wasn't just a Republican winning, which in itself isn't the most terrible thing there is, because at least Republicans can be aligned to the constitutional order. For instance, former Congresswoman Liz Cheney. I don't have to agree with their policies to acknowledge, hey, at least they're not going to go rogue on the Constitution. But this one was not just a consequence of a Republican winning, but a tyrant, authoritarian, constitutional order destroyer. And I would say the difference is that millennials at least know that our only alternative is the lesser of two evils, and we criticize that. However, we know that in our current reality, we only had two choices, and there's no such thing as a protest vote that can make a difference in a reality where Citizens United literally dictates what each party is prioritizing. Should it change? Yes. Was not voting going to change that? No. However, the full blame doesn't go on the voters. Why? Because if I have a restaurant and no one comes to my restaurant, it's because I have to improve my product. If my product isn't appealing to the people, then I have to shift that. The Democratic Party just assumed that we will settle for what's there, and Gen Z told them, no, we will not. Was it reckless? Absolutely. But the root of that isn't blaming the voters. The root of that is blaming the party for not shifting itself to a party worth voting for. Let's put this in perspective. Say I'm in a relationship, I have a girlfriend, and I tend to have this tendency where small talk turns into more talk when it comes to me interacting with people, particularly girls. That's been a problem in the past, and I just acknowledged that last week when I went into Subway and I ended up being there for like 20 minutes because the girls behind the counter kept talking to me. They didn't have any other customers. But point is, I now acknowledge that this is an actual issue that can be seen as problematic to a partner. Now, if she tells me she doesn't like when I do that and I don't realign myself to become a better man that she deserves, eventually she's going to get tired of it. And she's going to get tired of settling, and she's just going to leave me. And that's fair, which is what happened exactly in 2024, where voters were so disillusioned with the party that voters had just decided to not engage. Instead of trying to seduce Republicans who were already ingrained into the MAGA extremism, what we should have done is try to appease to that who were indifferent and very disillusioned with the party by rectifying that. But instead, we went to seduce Republicans. But even if she won because Republicans shifted their presidential preference, we would have lost the majority in Congress anyways. Why? Because there was no incentive for people to show up. Why? Because they didn't perceive there was a progressive party. Now let's explore further. Being a progressive is just an umbrella term for further progressive subgenres, like leftist and liberal. In its totality, what it truly means is that you want progress, you want change, you want to shift towards a common perspective of creating a more perfect union. That is in alignment with the constitutional preamble that says as much. You believe we should be advancing as a country, not going backwards. Advancing in rights, not restricting rights. You want progress, not to remain the same or go back. Now, what is a leftist? Note, this is all in my own political thinking experience. So this is a lesson from my own interpretation with political science, with American constitutionalism and international law. I studied here in the United States. I studied in Europe. So within our constitutional framework, what is a leftist? A leftist centers social wellness. What is a liberal? A liberal prioritizes balance, so social wellness, but not at the cost of economic stability. A leftist can fantasize about a reality without capitalism, but liberals understand that we have to make do with capitalism and ensure that capitalism is a means to a socialist, and that is the public good within our preamble. What's important to note is that there's a difference between liberals in regards to the voters and the establishment liberals who very much center libertarianism. That is a fantasization of an absolute capitalist society in which everything like economic freedom and free markets reign free. A leftist agrees with something like this. If someone works full-time, they should be able to pay their bills with their paycheck. While an establishment liberal would say that since we have a free market, then Congress should be capable of trading stock. even if there is some conflict of interest in regards to them trading stock with information and in any other reality would be insider trading. On the other side, a leftist may want no borders, but a liberal accepts that we have to have border security. However, we need humane border security. But when you study into how libertarianism is in practice, what you realize is that it is basically the opposite of communism. But if communism is incompatible with American constitutionalism, then so is libertarianism. Because if absolute socialism, which is communism, can be considered by our founders to equate to tyranny, then doing the same with absolute capitalism, which is libertarianism, leads to tyranny. The driving force behind this autocratic and oligarchical takeover was marketed through libertarianism, a lens that fantasized mass deregulation and absolute bureaucratic elimination. This changes a progressive party into a conservative progressive party that literally no one but corporate donors and special interests asked for. What is a conservative progressive? You view the stakeholders not as the constituents, so the people, the individual voters, but the highest bidders. Citizens United created an illusion where the constituents don't matter because you can buy them out with what? Corporate money that is funneled into the campaigns by special interests, right? This leads to a corporate Democrat platform that isn't technically illegal or unconstitutional because of Citizens United. It allows for weaponized incompetence and willful ignorance. This is the preservation of the status quo. These are the establishment liberals, the old guard, and libertarians. For most parts, progressives are constitutionalist, with a small portion preferring a collapse of it. The judgment is that the Democratic Party ideologies categorizes the party as a moderate progressive party. What does moderate means? It means a proud moderation of balance between the left and liberals, not between the liberals and conservatives. But in our reality, the party in practice categorizes itself as a progressive conservative party. It has been derailed by establishment Democrats who cannibalize the party to preserve the status quo, decorum, and party traditions like policing party appointments to only those arbitrarily deemed valuable and worthy, so not a threat to the party. Brand, right? What is the party brand? It is that created by the DNC, who has inherited one that is progressive, conservative. So they don't like angering corporate sponsors and special interests. That's why Pelosi didn't want AOC on oversight, right? Two leftists, you punch left, not to the right. So whose fault is it? It's not the voters. It's not Kamala Harris, because I would say she didn't lose because of her platform, because absolutely no political candidate is perfect, but because of her association with a party that already lost the trust of the voters, right? It's not the left, it's not pro-Pally, because Americans do not vote on foreign policy. Pally can be a part of it, but entirely it is the disillusionment with the party. The fault is an inherited Democratic National Committee strategy of punching left while moving right. The fault of political consultants that they keep, who are great at keeping corporate and special interest donors satisfied. However, they suck and fail at keeping voters. The establishment Democrats, who are too comfortable to realign to progressive values. Why? Because their whole agenda is to keep the money pouring in, right? The corporations are who they have to convince, not the voters, because they'll just send you an email and say, we have not met our threshold of funding. It's going to look really bad when the Republicans see it. So please donate. So instead of becoming a better party worth voting for, they just want us to settle. And Gen Z told them, we're not going to settle. Does that justify them fumbling liberty? Does that justify them sending us into a tyranny? No. But it's also primarily on the Democratic Party's fault for failing to be that party worth voting for.